Greetings, folks. Do you have audio recordings that you would like transcribed into machine readable text? Perhaps you're some kind of social scientist who's recorded interviews with research participants, or perhaps you're a business person who has recorded a meeting with a client for later reference. In both cases, you have these audio files, and it might be useful to have a digital text version of that audio that can be easily searched. But of course, you don't want to give up that audio to some third party company that's going to sell all that data and use it to train their own models and whatever else. So, how do we do audio to text transcription locally? Well, there's an open source solution for that. It's called WhisperX, which is based on the open source Whisper audio speech recognition ASR model developed by OpenAI back when it still cared about openness. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to get WhisperX installed and running on your machine. Now, there are some prerequisites. Well, really one prerequisite, and that's Python. You must have Python installed on your machine. You can go to python.org here. You can go to downloads, and as you'll see, there will be downloads for your particular operating system, whether that's Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and so forth. If you're running Linux, it's probably already installed. If you're running Windows, you'll have to download the exe and install it. It's been like 3 years since I've used a Windows PC, but I do remember that you'll have to check the option to allow Python to add itself to your path, your PAHTH. Make sure you do that when you're installing. If you're running Mac OS, you can also install Python through Homebrew. If you go to brew.sh, you can see more about Homebrew and how to install it. It works on both Mac OS and Linux, and it's basically a containerized package manager. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. Just know that it's pretty good at getting stuff like Python and other command line tools installed. Now, even if you looked at how you needed to install Brew, you'll know we need to go to the terminal. So this is different on every operating system, but there should be something called terminal or command line, and you're going to want to open that up, and that's where we're going to be doing our work. I have Brew installed on my system, so I'm going to do brew install Python at 3.10. And Python version 3.10 is the most stable and well tested with WhisperX right now. We can confirm that the version of Python we want is installed by going Python 3.10 dash dash version, which proves that this is installed if you get an output there and not an error. So from there, we want to create a virtual environment to install the software in. A virtual environment is just a little containerized sandbox where you can install stuff and do things without it affecting the rest of the system. In Python, these virtual environments are frequently abbreviated as venv, V-E-N-V. So we go Python 3.10-m make virtual environment, and you can name it whatever you want. Wherever you are in your terminal here, so this little tilde means home, wherever you are in the terminal is where this file with all of our virtual environment stuff is going to be created. Keep that in mind for later. Now we need to actually enter into the virtual environment. We go source, then the name of your folder or the name of your virtual environment /bin/activate. And this is a path. It's physically telling the operating system, go to this location, this folder called WhisperX venv. In there, find the folder called bin, and then find the folder called activate. So now you should see in your terminal an indicator that you're in the virtual environment. Now we can just follow the instructions that are on the page of the GitHub repo. So it tells us that the only thing we need to do to install this is run pip install WhisperX. And it will take some time. It will install all of its dependencies and we'll come back when it's done. So when it's done, you should see something like this. Don't worry that it's telling you to upgrade pip. We can confirm that WhisperX is installed by going WhisperX dash dash version. And it should tell you what version it's on like you see here. Now, just a small note before we proceed, if you're on the same WhisperX version that I am, that's 3.7.6, you might encounter some error down the road that says something like this. In PyTorch 2.6, we've changed the default values, blah, blah, blah. You can fix that by running this command here, pip install torch less than 2.6, torch audio less than 2.6, and torch vision less than 2 or 0.21. What we're doing here is basically going back to a previous version of Torch where everything works, and it's probably the version that the developers were using when they were developing and testing this. Now what you need to do is get permission to use some of the models that WhisperX is going to operate with on the back end. So you have to go to a website called Hugging Face. As you can see here, you'll have to create an account and then sign in. Once you do that, you have to go to these two specific model repositories, and I'll put their names in the description. You can just search them up here once you're logged in, and you'll have to accept the terms. It will ask you to put in your company or university name and something like that. You can just put none for both of them and just hit accept. Once you've accepted the terms for the model, you'll see that you have been granted access to this model here. Then you need to get your access token from Hugging Face. So go up top to your profile, settings, access tokens, and create a new token. You can give it whatever name you want, but most importantly, you need to give it read permission. So click on this token type and make it read, and then give it the name you want. Then create token, and make sure you save this somewhere because as it says, you will not be able to see this again after you close this. So how do we actually use WhisperX from the command line here? As you saw a preview of when I typed version, the way we do it is by typing WhisperX and then typing the commands we want to give to the program. So instead of clicking around in a graphical user interface, we're just going to, via text, tell the program what we want it to do. Pro tip, most of the time when you're working with software like this, if you want to see all the options, all the different parameters for what you can tell the program to do, you can type WhisperX or whatever the program name is, dash dash help. And it spits out this big list of all the different parameters. Now, you don't need to worry about 95% of these. But if you wanted a nice little reference guide, you can type the same thing and then pipe it. So that basically says send whatever this outputs to a text file. And now if you go to the directory that you're in, if you go to your home folder or wherever you're operating your terminal from, you should see a file called Whisper Help. So you can see I've pulled up that file here and it lists all the parameters as well as down here an explanation of each parameter, what it actually means and what it's actually doing. So you can browse through this and see all the options you might want to use. Although, like I said, most of these will not apply for basic use cases. Let's go back to our terminal. Let's pull up our help file side by side so we can reference it. And let's write the command that's actually going to execute the transcription. So we start with WhisperX, then we're going to tell it what model to use. So dash dash model large V3 is state of the art right now. You can look this up. There are smaller models that will run faster and use less system resources if you need that. I don't have a GPU, so the default of the device that runs the transcription being the CPU, that works fine for me. So we can leave that blank. But if you had a GPU, you could put GPU there. Compute type is another one you might actually need to change. If you're running on the CPU, you'll want to use int 8, basically a sort of easier version of the processing for the CPU, which is less powerful for this than the GPU. Output dir, that's output directory. So that's just where we want the files we produce to go. So you can put in whatever path you want there. I have a folder in my home downloads folder that's called outputs, and I want the files to go there. So that's what I've put. Your model path will look different depending on what operating system you're running on. Output format, you can look into what all these different types of files are. Perhaps you need a specific type for your project. For example, I believe SRT is used for subtitles in video, but the simplest one will be TXT. Language, as you can see, there are many different languages supported. As you see, the software will try to perform language detection if this parameter is not set, but let's just go ahead and tell it that we're dealing with English. Diarize, that's basically where it's going to try to detect the voice of each speaker and sort of annotate who is speaking which lines, which can be helpful if you're dealing with an interview, for example. If you know how many speakers are involved, you can specify the max number of speakers and the minimum number of speakers, but you can also leave it none if you want the model to just do its best to figure it out. Threads, I have a pretty decent CPU, so I'm going to throw 8 threads at this. How many you can put depend on your CPU and how much is going on in the background of your system. Then we need to put our Hugging Face token that we got earlier. Then lastly, we need to give the path to the file, the audio file that we actually want to transcribe. So I have a file called audio sample, and I'll play that file while the model is running, and then we'll look at the results.
You have your robotics, and I just want to be awesome in space.
Oh, come on. Why don't you just admit that you're totally freaked out by my robot hand?
I'm not freaked. All right, fine. I'm freaked out. I'm having nightmares about being chased by these robotic arms of death.
Oh, whatever, Tom. We're done here.
So I've pulled up the text file with the outputs here. And as you can see, it looks pretty accurate. This is a machine learning kind of thing, so every time you run this, it can be slightly different. Fiddling with all the parameters we just saw and using a larger diarization model and so forth might give you better results if you're not getting the results you want. But as you can see here, it looks like it's pretty accurately separated the man speaking from the woman speaking, even though they were speaking with accents. So there you go, folks. That's how to run WhisperX locally on your computer for transcription. I think there are better options for transcription if you're running Linux, but WhisperX through Python will run on any operating system. So it's a good universal solution to the problem. Let me know your thoughts and feedback in the comments down below. Take care, folks.